agenda items will be live on YouTube. We're live now on YouTube.
Councilor Garcia, you're all set up, sir.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. You take it easy.
Okay, you too. Be safe.
Agenda
Yes, sir.
items will be live on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
So does the public know where we are and how to get here now?
Yes, it should still be the same YouTube link that we have for our, so the link directs the public to our City of Santa Fe YouTube page. So this is live. I can double check just doing a quick search, but we should be live now. So folks, might hold on one moment. We are live, so thank you for the double check and question, committee member Spencer. And I apologize to the committee. I did think that there was a Zoom link, that way folks can participate. That's one of the things with the Open Meetings Act and the challenges with Zoom. We can't just walk into a room like we were in the past. We have to provide access to a public meeting such as YouTube or a Zoom link if we're not going to be broadcasting live. So I do apologize for the quick confusion there. Mr. Rosado, so was there any questions for our guest? I don't see any hands popping up. I do just want to welcome you. I know that we've had that position vacant for a while, and I can only imagine that you're hitting the ground running. And if you need to borrow a pair of sneakers to get moving swiftly, I'm more than happy to lend you some. And I just want to welcome you to Team City of Santa Fe, and always welcome you to come back and participate in the meeting as a guest, as in any fashion. Please do come back, and I do definitely look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Chair. I will definitely be back.
Great. Look forward to it. Hearing no other questions, let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is item 7B, 90% design plan review of Sandoval Montezuma intersection improvements project. This was brought forth by committee member Tallman.
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to really, I think, thoroughly look through it, but one comment that I would like to make about it is just a concern that the chicanes or the bulb outs on Montezuma should be considered that they shouldn't push bicycles in to merge with vehicle traffic. So that's a traffic calming device. It could be useful, but maybe it could be with buffered edges so that bicycles couldn't go up and over it rather than merging with traffic. That was sort of the one concern that I saw in the design that I wanted to bring up.
Mr. Chair, we have the consultant with us.
Okay.
Mr. Tyler Ashton is here from Wilson and Company.
Great. Welcome, Mr. Ashton. Did you want to add any additional comments or insider feedback to the agenda item?
Well, I guess I could give a little bit of an overview. I'm not sure what the committee knows about the project. It is funded under capital outlay. It's with NMDOT oversight, and essentially it's intersection safety improvements. I think 3 of the sides of the intersection are currently not ADA compliant. And probably, as most of you know, at the northeast corner is the courthouse. So I believe that was the main driving reason to get this intersection up to ADA standards. And as far as Mr. Tallman's comment, I understand where you're coming from as far as pushing the bicyclists out into a travel lane. but the lanes that are currently there are for parallel street parking. So they're not necessarily used as like a bike lane. So technically the bicycle should already be in the lane as they're coming up into the intersection. But I mean, we're happy to entertain comments and to make any changes that need to be changed. That's pretty much where we're at. We're at 90% ready to go back to the DOT for review for that piece. Once we get through that, I believe we have one small, one of the clearances we need to get through the DOT, and then we'll be back to PS&E review and get it out for construction.
Well, parallel street parking doesn't usually run right up to an intersection. So if there's a line of cars and a bicycle, the bicycle will almost certainly not be in front of the line, but will be to the side. And so that forces sort of a merging inside of an intersection situation, which isn't even legal for cars. So I mean, I think what's expected of a bicyclist in the intersection is by the design to merge in the intersection. And I think, yeah, some very small tweaks to the design, just in how the ramps work or how that barrier acts as a barrier to vehicles versus a barrier to bicycles, could kind of solve some of those potential conflicts. And it is a low volume road. It wouldn't be something that would have a high degree of danger, but I think the safety could be slightly improved through that, through a slight modification of the design.
Do you have like an example that you'd like that you could share? It just curiosity.
Well, I mean, I don't have like a visual to pull up on the screen at the moment.
Okay, no, that's fine. And you can go through Romella and she can get it to us, or through Tom Graham, who's actually the PM with the city currently. The ADA coordinator is who we're working with mainly for this project.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and pull up maybe something from like NACTO or whatnot, as far as something that would give you like a really concise image of what I'm trying to describe.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect, and it'd be pretty easy to input into the design at this point.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the agenda item?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Committee Member Spencer.
just slightly bearing on that. When we traffic calmed Central Avenue up in Los Alamos back when I was Transportation Board Chair, we did put in pretty substantial bulb outs, and there was a great deal of consternation in the bicycle community because they did tend to shade into the parking bays when there were no cars parked there, and then had to swerve out around the bulb outs because, as Sky mentioned, we didn't bevel them so that they could be ridden over for fear that bicyclists would then impinge on the pedestrian safety zones. So it was considered a bit of A versus B situation rather than something that everybody was happy with. To my knowledge, no one's ever been hurt there, but it did tend to intimidate bicyclists who had to suddenly deal with the bulb out as well as merging into traffic. So the question was, did you always take the lane so that you wouldn't have to merge, or did you have to merge at the last minute to get around the bulb out? So it has been a concern up there. Like I said, I don't think it's ever gotten anyone killed or screamed at too often, but we've heard the same story up there before when we put the bulb outs in. And the good news is the bulb outs and the other traffic calming dropped the motor vehicle speed limit to actually below the posted limit, the 85th percentile speed. So they worked really well in terms of pedestrian safety, but it was a bit of a clash of cultures, so to speak. Thank you.
Another question, Tyler. And this may be clear in the documents, I just didn't quite get to that level of detail in looking at them. Was lighting part of your project, or are you touching the lighting?
We are not touching the lighting. We are, however, adding pedestrian push buttons. We're putting out some pedestrian push buttons because the intersection there by I believe it's the Santa Fe Radio Shop at the northwest side has no ADA ramp at all. So.
Great.
Okay, any other comments or discussion on the matter? Okay, hearing none. I do just want to remind folks that might just be tuning in on YouTube that we did have some technical difficulties, which stopped us from having the meeting broadcast on YouTube about a half an hour into our meeting. And just as a quick update, the only actions that we've taken thus far is roll call, which we've established a quorum. We had an approval of our agenda, which eliminated item 6A. We did not have a presentation from Eric Anye from the MPO. We approved our meeting minutes, and during communications from the public, we had a moment of silence in remembrance of community member Tom Trowbridge. We also had a presentation from Mr. Tim Rogers of the Santa Fe Conservation Trust. And right now we're moving on to item 7C. And so that is being brought forth by Ms. Glorioso Mas.
So it's the request for a bicycle pedestrian easement off of East Sia Road. I asked Ms. Zoe Isaacson, she's a projects administrator over at River and Watershed Engineering Division, to look at the possibility of developing a trail next to the arroyo. Apparently it's the Arroyo de los Chamizos. But she said that the location of the current trail lies mostly on private property and is entirely disconnected from the arroyo, which we all know. So therefore, it does not qualify for a project through the River and Watershed program. So she recommended to pursue this with the Santa Fe MPO and of course the roadway and trails section under engineering division. So reviewing our minutes on page 14, when we were discussing about issuing a bond for the 4 projects, namely Acequia Trail from Otowi to La Cienegita, Tierra Contenta from Arroyo Chamizo Trail, New Mexico Central Rail Trail, and the Midtown Campus Trail. Mr. Oni at the time suggested that for BTAC to consider the Zia Trail and to include it in the projects that we are going to implement via GRT bond. But there was no motion that was made because Member Tolman said that he prefers to wait for answers to the questions. So to move forward with this project with roadway and trails or Santa Fe MPO, we need to make a motion, to pass a motion. The first motion is to include the Zia Trail project in your strategic plan. Why are we going to do this? Because our chance of getting funded is higher if we prioritize projects in our strategic plan. So at the last meeting, Mr. Oni also suggested to add the other 4 projects in the strategic plan, but there was no motion made and no motion passed on that effect. The second motion that we need, or the committee needs to pass, is to fund the phase 1 study of the Zia Trail via GRT or other funding such as TAP, which is the Transportation Alternative Fund, or the other funding called Recreational Trails Program. They will release the call for projects sometime in May. The phase 1 study that I'm referring to. In the NMDOT process, phase 1 study includes, it's just studying the alternatives for the trail. It will include, as based on the suggestion of Mr. Oni at the last time we met, it will include legal discovery of the rights of the landowners and the rights of the city to move forward. So those are 2 recommendations from staff, how to move forward with this project.
Thank you for the update, Ms. Glorioso Mas. Do any committee members have any questions? Committee member Gabrielle.
So if I understand what you just told us, Romella, the committee should be making 2 motions. One is to incorporate this project into our strategic plan so that we can prioritize it and seek funding. And the other is to recommend the assessment as, I don't know if it's required by the DOT, but it sounds like a standard procedure. Did I understand that correctly?
Mr. Chair, Member Gabriel, yes, the first one is, yes, the first motion is correct, but the second motion is to fund this study, the phase 1 study of the Zia Trail via GRT bond or other funding mechanisms like the TAP or the Recreational Trails Program.
And if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, committee member Tallman.
And Romella, there was a third motion you mentioned needed to request funding for the other 4 projects that were presented by Mr. Ani in the last meeting. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Member Tallman, a motion was passed at the last meeting that those 4 projects will be funded. There's a request to fund those 4 projects via GRT, but the Zia Trail was not included in that motion.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions, committee member Tallman? Okay, any other questions from any other committee members? What's the wishes of the committee? Do we want to take action on this at this moment, or do we want to take the information, digest it, and maybe come back and make a motion at a future meeting?
I will make a motion to include the Zia to Zia Trail in the strategic plan.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we've got a second from committee member Spencer. Any discussion on the motion from the committee? Okay, hearing, or committee member Gabrielle, I see a hand up. Was that an old hand, maybe? Yeah, looks like it went down. Okay. Hearing no other comment, let's go ahead and Romella, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Redner,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Member Tallman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Now that that motion is passed, is there any other discussion on the matter or any other action the committee would like to take?
I have a question.
Sure, Committee Member Tillman.
I would like to make a motion to fund a phase 1 study, but I think before I do, would it be appropriate or meaningful to put like a time frame on that to fund the study before 2023 or something? I know if we apply for the TAP or the RTP funds for that, that would be available at the earliest by 2023. So I'm not sure if we want to make a motion for that, if it makes sense, or if it's even meaningful for the city to work with timeframes like that, or if the city has it on its list, then it happens when it can happen, and it doesn't really matter if we ask for it to happen like in the next 2 years.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Member Tolman, if we include this in the GRT bond, then we'll get the funding very quickly. So GRT bond is city-funded projects.
Right, and I don't know how if that would affect sort of the likelihood of it happening, or if that affects its competitiveness in how the city would like to proceed. Is there anything that we should consider if we think like, oh, GRT or some other source?
If we get funded via GRT, this is just a study. So after the study, we are in a better position to apply for other funding, like for example, construction, because the city has funded the phase 1 of the study. Then we can move forward or apply for preliminary and final design.
Okay.
Chairman Garcia, I've got a comment.
Sure. Let me see. I don't see who that is on my screen. Sorry. Usually I can recognize voices.
It's a little
who is-
dark here. I'm trying to find a light.
That's Gary Oakley.
It's Gary
okay.
Oakley.
Are you a committee member, Mr. Oakley?
No, I'm a guest. I was at the last meeting to bring up this whole issue with the Zia path.
Okay, great. Yes, Mr. Oakley. Sorry. Thank you for refreshing my memory. Yes, the floor is yours.
That's fine. I was by there yesterday, and the entrance to that Zia trail from the west now has substantial barriers and no trespassing signs. So they don't want people going through that trail anymore. If you come in from the east, there isn't any signs, but there is this strong statement that they don't want people on that trail anymore. And it's my understanding, I'm not an attorney, but when a trail is open to the public like this for several years, it can be seen as public right away. But once it's closed off, I think there is some kind of time limit that after it's closed off for a year or so without any action, it can be permanently shut off to the public. Now, I don't know if that's the route that the committee would want to take as far as this goes, but it just seems like a timely thing that if something could happen reasonably soon, it might benefit that opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oakley, for the feedback. Any other questions or comments?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
If what Gary says is true, that there's sort of a time limit or a 1-year period after which what may be recognized as a public trail is no longer recognized, are there any other actions that we could take in the interim? Because, requesting funding and leading to a study, which maybe eventually leads to some action, could be a few years, could be a slow process. and which, just the time that takes could change the circumstance to maybe one that's less favorable. Would it be appropriate to ask the city to request comment from the landlord, of the landowner?
Mr. Chair, Member Tolman, what I can do is probably approach the city property manager, Mr. Ed Hill, and see what we can do. Or the land, Mr. Vihil works for the land use, so I can discuss with him this issue.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yes, Mr. Oakley.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea that you just mentioned, Ms. Rosella, that the property is now for sale and they've split it into 2 lots. And so it might be timely since it's in transition to have that discussion with the authorities on the land use.
Mr. Chair, Member Tolman, Mr. Oakley, if that path is close to us, we can still apply for funding to make the trail next to the arroyo. And then it's just that Ms. Isaacson said that it doesn't qualify for them to fund that trail if we make a trail next to the arroyo. But if we have our own funding, then we can implement this project. We can make this trail next to the arroyo. That's if that path is close to us.
Thank you, Ms. Gloria Solas. And I guess just for clarification for the committee members that might have the agenda item open, on the picture that you produced in the packet, the existing trail that has been used by community members is the line that's in pink. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then so the trail or the arroyo that is it seems to be north. I don't know the directions off of the map or off the picture here. That arroyo that's above that would be where a new trail could be built. So folks would go down West Zia, go up, I can't tell the name of that street.
Hotels Road.
No, Old Arroyo Chamiso Road.
Oh,
Then go down the a new trail down the arroyo to Boltoff. Is that what staff is recommending?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And to me, it sounds, given that this property is up for sale, I know that it's historically been used, but I think given the time frame, I don't know if that interests the committee to look into that, because if the property does be sold, I don't want us to spend 3-4 months on this project when ultimately the property is going to be sold to a private landowner. And I think with it being closed off, it's kind of giving us a message that this is no longer being to be used by the public. So with that, I just wanted to point that out. Let me turn it back over to committee members. And I do see some hands, committee member Redner, and then we'll go to committee member Tallman.
yeah, I just want to say that, we discussed this issue approximately 3 years ago, and unfortunately, I don't recall any outcome from that particular meeting, but I'm really concerned about the possibility that something which is a public asset gets taken over by some landowner and then it gets closed off. And so I want to make sure that we take every possible step to ensure that that trail does not get closed off because of private ownership and something which seems dubious in the first place, because it certainly was a trail 3 or 4 years ago and then somehow got closed off at that point. So I just want to be sure that we don't get snookered and find out like a year from now, oh, we can't do it because a new property owner has put up barbed wire. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Committee Member Redner. I appreciate that, and thank you for providing the historical context as well. Committee Member Tallman, your hand was up next, and then I don't see any other hands.
I think we have probably said most of what we want to say about this project, so I would like to make a motion to request the city to seek funding for a phase 1 study on this Zia to Zia connection.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Committee Member Tallman, a second by Committee Member Spencer. Any discussion on the motion? Don't see any hands up. Because the presentation's up, feel free to unmute yourself and just identify yourself and go ahead and speak if you're a committee member. Okay,
So,
hearing none.
sorry.
Sorry.
this
Sorry,
is
go ahead,
Judith.
Committee Member Gabrielle.
So when Romella was speaking earlier about requesting funding through GRT, and that could happen sooner, do we want to say anything about that possibility in our motion to see if we can put this on the agenda sooner rather than later? And if the GRT doesn't come through, then we could seek other funding like TAP?
That's a friendly amendment.
So what I'm hearing is you're wanting to add to the motion to seek potential funding from GRT or TAP if necessary, TAP funding sources if necessary.
Yes, and maybe I wouldn't be so specific about the TAP funding, but it just sounded like we may have a chance to fund sooner if we specifically request GRT consideration. And if that doesn't follow through, then there may be other options, including TAP. Is that clear what I'm saying?
It's clear to me, but I think the motion maker will ultimately still need to rescind the motion and restate the motion. I'm just kind of seeking clarification that way. Should Mr. Tallman want to rescind his motion?
Yeah, I see that as a friendly
restate it?
amendment. I rescind the motion and make a new motion to request.
Before we do that, hold on. Mr. Spencer, do you rescind your second?
I'll rescind the second in anticipation of a new motion.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just want to make sure we're doing things in order.
Thank you. I forget all the little steps myself.
Hey, it's understandable.
So I make a new motion to request for the city to seek GRT funding for a phase 1 study of the Zia to Zia connection.
I will second the new motion.
Okay. There is now a new motion on the floor. Any discussion? Feel free to raise your virtual hand or just identify yourself and speak, please. Committee Member Gabrielle, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. So just to be clear, if we say that we're seeking GRT funding and we don't say we're seeking other funding, does that not allow us to seek other funding later, or can we just deal with that if the GRT funding doesn't come through?
I believe if it doesn't come through, we would have to bring this back before BTAC and restate a motion with further direction.
Well, just a further follow-up question. As an advisory committee, we're not making a legally binding request to the city. We're just saying, hey, would you seek GRT funding? And so it seems like if the city were to seek another source of funding, the spirit of the motion would that bind the city to come back to the BTAC for further clarification?
To answer that question, Mr. Tillman, I think potentially yes. because if there's a recommendation to seek GRT and the decision is to not go that route, there's no further direction from the committee. I see the point you're trying to make, but if we're trying to explore all options, that's where you might want to say explore GRT funding or other applicable revenue sources.
Okay, so I'll rescind my motion
I'll rescind the second.
Okay.
and I'll make a new motion to request for the city of Santa Fe to seek GRT or other applicable funding sources to pursue a phase 1 study on the Zia to Zia connection trail.
Second.
Okay, got a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on the motion that's in front of us now? Okay, not seeing any or hearing any committee members speak. Ms. Glorioso-Mas, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
You forgot
Member
me.
Redner,
Yes.
Member Tolman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Glorioso-Mas. Do we have any other discussion on this agenda item, which is item 7C? Committee Member Tillman.
I would like, I think it may be preliminary to make a motion. I would like to request comment from the city on how the city could formalize these informal trail connections that bicyclists or pedestrians use, such as this one. So near where I live, there's an informal trail that goes along the river. It connects to the river trail, and then it gives access to the La Cañada neighborhood. And recently, a new development has moved that trail over. And I think what we need is some sort of legal structure where these informal existing used trails have some legal status. When a development permit is pulled, for example, perhaps that those trails have to be reckoned with and preserved in some form. And I'm not sure how that would fit best into the city's process and legal structure. But I would like to maybe request some maybe options or recommendations from the city on how that could apply to more than just this one particular trail.
Okay, Ms. Glorioso-Mas, do we need to make a formal motion for that request, or can we just put forth the request to city staff?
Mr. Chair, you can just it's not make a motion, and I will go to land use and talk about this issue, the general issue of formalizing trails.
Okay.
If that is the wish of the chair.
Yes, please. Please. I think that would be great. And if possible, we can get a report out at the meeting next month.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments on the agenda item? Okay, seeing no virtual hands pop up, let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is 7D, Law and Policy Subcommittee discussion of issues and actions. Committee Member Eisenstein. who's the chair of the subcommittee. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I just had a few things on the strategic plan that I wanted to go through, and there are a couple of decisions that we probably need to make. On the first strategy, I talked with Eric about this, and he is already moving forward with this. He has reached out to land use. He and Leah have started looking at the design guidelines. And the issue that we need to decide at this point, he is looking at doing a white paper eventually, but we both felt that we needed someone from the committee to sort of be the liaison on this project. Since it's our strategy, someone on the committee should be involved with Eric and the MPO as they work through this, to give us reports, et cetera. So, I mean, I can be involved from an ordinance standpoint, but this is certainly not my area of expertise, which is to update the city's design guidelines and design criteria. So my question is, first of all, do we agree that someone from the committee should be involved with Eric as they go through this? And number two, who should that person be in terms of being the liaison? Chair Garcia, I guess I would look to you in terms of your guidance on whether we really need to have someone working with Eric on this strategic plan, on this one strategy.
Thank you, Committee Member Eisenstein, for your question. I guess I'll answer your question with a question. Do any of the committee members want to play this liaison position, this role? I'm not hearing anybody. I do think it would be good to have BTAC representation with this, and ultimately, if it means me playing the role, I'm happy to do so. Committee member Wellington. Oh, that's subcommittee member. Sorry, Jennifer. I apologize. Committee member Tolman.
My thought on that is that I think Eric and his team are very well informed about how to proceed with that. And I think he is already, or the MPO is already giving us updates. So I think even without a member working with the MPO, the BTAC or BPAC will be informed of progress and updates and have opportunity to comment as they go forward. So I'm not sure if a BPAC member, I'm not sure if I see that as necessary, but if other people see otherwise, I'm not opposed to it.
Mr. Chair, Member Tolman, this strategic plan is BPAC's strategic plan. It's not the SFMPO strategic plan. So we need to lead this plan. So I suggest, because Member Tolman is the chair of Planning and Funding Subcommittee, I think it's the Planning and Funding Subcommittee that needs to lead this.
Okay, happy to do that.
You have members, 3 members or 4 members from the committee or committee members, and you have 3 non-committee members, and then you can meet with them and discuss how can BPAC implement this strategy.
Well, and I will add that Eric did think it was a good idea that someone from BPAC be involved. So he really did feel that would be a good thing to have one of our members, committee members, be involved with what they're working on.
I'm happy to work with Eric as sort of with the planning and funding subcommittee.
Okay, and as I said, when the ordinances come up, or if there's a way that I can contribute in terms of doing any research or making comments on, that front, I'm happy to do it. But it's the whole design issue and the crux of it is not my area. So, okay. So that was my only question on that one. On the strategy 8, which is the partnerships, my question was, is someone from promotion and education going to be sort of the keeper of the list? How should we move forward on that? One of the suggestions that came up last time was to look at some of the neighborhood groups and homeowners associations. I mean, law and policy is happy to kind of start pulling a list together on that if that's how we want to go forward. So my question is basically, what are the next steps on that in terms of how we develop these partnerships? Because I know it was something that we thought was really important. So I guess my question would be to Cal at this point, is his subcommittee going to take the lead on this, and how can we help out in terms of helping get everything together and developing a list?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, we're actually going to have a small meeting tomorrow within the new green guidelines. So basically an in-person bike on the road meeting to try to identify who we could recruit to sort of act as a brain trust for the education and outreach. I think Tim's going to be there, Tim Rogers. Someone's going to be there from Seniors on Bikes. And what we'd like to do is get an email list together and start contacting some of these organizations, bike shops, BTI, neighborhood organizations, to find out who wants to be involved in this. So that was going to be my we didn't meet yet report for later in the meeting, but that's sort of where we are right now. But we plan on meeting at noon tomorrow, and presumably if we don't have a quorum, anybody who's interested is welcome to meet us. We're supposed to meet up around noonish at the Marcy side of City Hall, and then go for a bike ride around the city and talk about this stuff.
Okay, that sounds great. I know Gary Schiffmiller will probably be in, he's in my subcommittee. I think he'll probably be interested in participating. So I will let him know that.
Yeah, if we have an email list, a communication list, that'd be great. Not having lived in Santa Fe very long, I'm really not the expert on who to contact where, so I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. I'll put you in touch with Gary. He's part of the Bike Santa Fe group.
Yeah, Bike Santa Fe is one of the other groups. Yeah.
And he's been very helpful on the subcommittee. He's put together, I mean, he's very interested. So I'll let him know that is happening tomorrow, and we'll get him involved in that. So
yeah, that's just a start. I think since we've gone green now, it won't be quite so claustrophobic trying to get people together.
Okay. All right, good. Then Eric brought this up on strategy 10, the website. I didn't realize that there is already a web page up for BPAC, or BTAC rather, and there's some misinformation out there. And so I was just wondering, one of the things it says is that we meet every Wednesday, which we don't. And so my question is, should we do something on the current web page that says new website coming soon, or at least let's have someone review what's out there on BTAC, BPAC, and at least make sure there's correct information out there?
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, Member Eisenstein, that's the website that we tried to put out last year. But the website is the one who's leading that activity is the clerk's office. And so what the clerk's office will do is set up the websites for all advisory committees and council committees. So there's some uniformity, and they will delete all those websites that are the current websites. I cannot do that because I'm not from IT, but the clerk's office has rolled out the new meeting procedures March 1st, and I will talk about it from when we come to the communications from the staff.
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up, that Eric had noticed that we had some misinformation on BTAC out there. The last part that I wanted to bring up is the master signage plan, strategy 11, and that segues into strategy 12 as well. Gary Schiffmiller, my subcommittee member, put together a spreadsheet that I'm hoping there is a way that we can all share it, whether, and I don't know how that works, whether it's on Google Docs or whether there's some other way that everyone could have access to it. But he's listed all of the signs that he knows about that are in production. We included the wayfinding signs. We contacted Tim and he gave us an update on that. And so basically, I just put that out there for everyone's information, and thinking that we can use that for proposals. We put Bruce's proposal that maybe to put mile marker signs and put that as a proposal. And so my question is, or my thought is, you know, will this be helpful going forward when something comes up about a sign, or do we need signs, that we can look to that and say, okay, well, here's what we have going right now, and here's the status. And he's willing to keep that up to date for us. So I guess my question is, do we think that's something that's, you know, useful going forward in terms of the signage plan?
Committee Member Tillman, I see your hand is up.
Sort of a little bit of a tangential response to that question. Right now, FHWA is updating the MUTCD, like the manual on traffic control devices, which includes signs and pavement markings, and it's open for public comment. So if anybody on this committee, or if anybody watching would like to comment on that, it's about 700 pages, you know, so it's a big document. But there is sort of an opening to have a voice or an influence in sort of on a national level, the policies around signing.
Okay. The one action item that I wanted to put forth on the signage is the issue of sharrows. I heard last meeting and have heard from some people who ride bikes who say that the sharrows are not really meaningful. People don't know what they mean. And we have sharrows right now that are in very poor repair, and there is no money to repair them. So my question is, do we want to do one of two things? Either make a recommendation that we get rid of them, or do we want to make a recommendation that we think they're important and that we need them, and that we need to get funding to repair them so that they're visible? So I put that out to the committee to see what everybody's thoughts are on the sharrows, so that we can either make a suggestion to repair them or replace them, or do we get rid of them? So I'll open that up for comments.
Any committee members have any feedback? Committee Member Redner.
Yeah, I guess I'll say, just as a frequent bicyclist around Santa Fe, I find the sharrows to be not helpful, because in a place where you could take the full lane. Like I'm actually afraid to do it because I don't want to get run over. So I basically always stay to the right side of any lane, and like in roads that are really narrow, like Paseo de Peralta, very, like at the around the corner where there's a bunch of stop signs, I just go as fast as I possibly can so that I'm like exposed in a one lane road as little time as possible. But I think the Sharrows, if one had those very clever paint signs which look like the three-dimensional images, maybe that would be effective. But I think Sharrows as they are now are just, I don't find them to be useful, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, committee member Gabrielle. Oh, sorry, committee member Redner. I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you done? Okay, so then we'll go to committee member Gabrielle and then committee member Spencer.
I was going to say, if we decide to recommend that the Sharrows be redone, that we should do a public education campaign at the same time. I actually like the Sharrows. I feel like it's an educational symbol to the cars as well that they're supposed to be sharing. I have no idea if they really understand that or not, but I think a public education campaign would be extremely important if we decide to fix them up. And is it possible to enhance them in some other way that indicates to cars that the Sharrow means you're sharing the lane with a cyclist?
Okay, thank you, committee member Gabrielle. Was that all the questions or comments? I think so. So committee member Spencer, then committee member Morlino.
Yeah, I remember reading a few years back when Santa Fe first started installing Sharrows, there was an article in the Santa Fe New Mexican that even the police department didn't know what they meant. So there's clearly been a need for education. My concern is that they're kind of the last resort of bicycle safety. What I see them as being useful for in conjunction with bicycles may use full lane is areas like East Alameda, where we lose the river trail. It basically goes down to a sidewalk. And there's been complaints about conflicts between bicyclists and pedestrians. It's not clear to me whether the bicyclists are continuing to use the sidewalk with a path along the river as a bike path, which it really isn't by even minimal design standards, because they're afraid to use the road, and whether there's any encouragement or education on the part of the city through Sharrows and the bicyclists may use full lanes, that bicyclists are entitled to use the traffic lane on, say, East Alameda, which I think is a great example. There's cars parked along the edge there, so if you're riding too close to the edge, you're in the door zone, so you're going to get squished or possibly doored. So I think these can be an educational resource where we really don't have any other options for how to basically allow, show bicyclists where they ought to be. But I agree that we need a very strong educational component to say what they mean, because I suspect a lot of people don't know what they mean. And I've seen enough examples of them even being painted in the wrong place. I think on some places on Agua Fria, they're basically painted in the right edge of the roadway, so they're really not saying what they're supposed to say. So it's a major problem, and I don't think we really have a good handle on communicating with the city and with this committee and whoever else needs to know is, okay, what are we going to do with them if we keep them? A lot of the ones downtown in heavy traffic areas like Alameda are almost completely worn off, so you have to really look to find them. So we really do need to make a decision. If we're going to use them, we need to be serious about it or get rid of them. Thank you.
Thank you, committee member Spencer. Committee member Morlino, and then committee member Tallman.
Thank you. I just want to concur with other comments. I don't think people know what they mean. I don't think it's actually that intuitive of a symbol at all. I know Sharrows are not exclusive to Santa Fe, but a couple chevrons with a picture of a person on a bike does not, to me, communicate effectively across languages and cultures that this is an area where bikes can take the full lane. The as unilingual or one language as they are, the bikes may use full lane signs or better. Bicycles merging seems a little more explicit. I don't imagine I don't know how much money it costs to paint those. I think it would be better spent kind of with other signage or put into some fund that's for dedicated bike lanes or something like that. But I just don't think it's that intuitive or helpful.
Thank you, Committee Member Morlino. Committee Member Tallman, and then Committee Member Redner.
I feel similarly to Mr. Redner and Mr. Morlino. However, if we do update the Sharrows, if we do find some funding or some willpower to do that, I think we should use them in a different way from how we've used them in the past, and use the Sharrows that have directional indicators on them. So if there's a fork in the bike path, there should be that should be indicated on the Sharrow. So it's not just communicating to cars that there may be a bicycle on the road, but it's communicating to bicycles where bicycle paths are. Like whenever I'm going up like Osage Road, I don't know which street has connects to the bike path for the Acequia Trail, and it would be really helpful to have a Sharrow that pointed. This is like a bicycle path intersection, or of roads like Otoe, even though it's a low volume road, if we would use bicycle Sharrows or some sort of symbol on those, so that when you're on a bicycle path, that's an important connector between different pieces of that path, you know that you're on it. As it is, it's just an unmarked residential road, and you don't remember. It's hard to remember, and if you're not a local, it's impossible to know where that's going to, connect in Doshpa Park or whatnot. So I think symbols on Paseo de Peralta, that road is not designed for bicycles, and I don't really think the Sharrows help. Although, in other circumstances, I think they could be a useful tool.
Thank you, Committee Member Tillman. Committee Member Redner, your hand was up. I didn't know if you had comments.
No. I do want to add one thing, because again, this is maybe ancient history, but I remember this is maybe 4 years ago, Brian Kreimendal really pushed for having Sharrows and apparently worked with Regina Wheeler on getting them painted. And I happened to bump into him recently, and he was very upset that this seems like apparently there was a commitment from the city of Santa Fe to do these Sharrows, and apparently they did a half-assed job of it. And then, as we're seeing, they're just letting them go to rot. So I'm not necessarily advocating for refurbishing them, but it's just that I think that whenever we as a committee make some recommendation to like a car-oriented, government agency, it sometimes just like falls by the wayside. So I think that whatever we decide to do with the Sharrows, I mean, we just have to keep up the advocacy and also the upkeep. What if we're going to be doing it, actually installing anything.
Okay, thank you so much, Committee Member Redner. Committee Member Eisenstein, the floor is back to you.
Yes. So my thought on that is very similar to Member Redner and Moreno, that people don't know what they're about. And I think as someone who rides, I'm with Sid Redner. I don't assume that I can ride in the middle of the street. So they don't serve any purpose for me, because I don't trust cars, and I'm not going to ride in the middle, even though there's a Sharrow, because some car is going to get upset with me and he or she is going to ride my bumper and blow their horn or whatever. So I just don't see that they serve a purpose for people who ride bicycles. And if the cars don't recognize them and we don't have any money to repair them, my suggestion is, if we're going to put more resources into something, let's put the resources into something that may be beneficial, whether it's signs or some other way to educate people regarding being bike friendly. So my suggestion is, let's not pour money into something that the bikers and the cars don't really find useful.
Thank you, Committee Member Eisenstein. I see a hand up from, I think, Subcommittee Member Robert D.
Yeah, hi. I just moved here from Santa Rosa, California. And one of the ways that they tackle this problem is they've actually taken some of the less traveled residential roads and they've made them bike thoroughfares where the bicycles actually have priority over the cars. They've done this by introducing speed humps in those areas and then signage all the way through. In my experience, I've been riding for 35 years. I've never seen a Shero work. Cars inherently seem to feel they have priority, regardless of the signage, with the exception of these thoroughfares. They were done on less traveled roads, and that really worked in that area. It connected different bike paths together, so you could actually get not just from one area of the town to another successfully, but you could actually get out of town fully without ever having to experience normal traffic. And that's all I have to offer on that.
Thank you so much for the feedback, Robert. I do see a hand up from Jennifer, but Jennifer, I don't have the ability to unmute you or let you into the room. Miss Gloriosa Mas, might you be able to admit her? While we're doing that, I just want to, I guess I'll give some feedback. I'll leave the Shero expertise to you all, but one thing I would encourage, no matter what direction the committee decides to take on the Sheros, is that we do plan to have an intensive education campaign in regards to all signage that we have. I recently was contacted by a constituent in regards to their concerns. Again, this different constituent in regards to one of our paths here in the city that is multi-use, and the pedestrian being concerned for their safety. And so I think we need to have an overall awareness campaign in regards to what signs mean what, even potentially what trails are multi-use. That way we are having friendly relationships between the users on the trails and paths or whatever it may be. I just wanted to kind of bring that up to the committee. Committee member or subcommittee member Wellington. Okay, let's go ahead and let you provide a comment.
Thank you, Councillor. My comment is that when I was on BTAC as a full member, we did get introduced and passed a resolution that the city council passed to have the bikes may use full lane signs, and that they were to be implemented in like 90 days. And that's still never been done. I think I've seen about 4 of the signs, and the signs that they ordered or started putting up at one point were incorrect. We really need someone who is in the corner of bicyclists to actually put these signs up. There was money allocated in the budget, and they were to be put up in 90 days, and they were to replace every single share the road sign. And there are probably more places that we need them than just the places where the share the road signs were. And they would, you know, replace possibly Sheros also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellington. I do see Member Spencer's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. It's pretty obvious, and I pretty much agree that Sheros are kind of a lukewarm soup solution to sharing the road or bicycles' rights. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I think maybe next meeting or so, this committee ought to have a motion ready for council to advise them what to do with them, whether to fund them or get rid of them. But the more serious question is, in areas where we just don't have an awful lot of room, like downtown where you have, say, Palace and Alamedas or parallel streets, what are we going to do to provide safety and accommodation to bicyclists? I agree with my colleagues on this committee that spraying a Shero in the middle of the road isn't going to make a bicyclist feel either welcome or safe in those constricted spaces between parked cars and pickup trucks. So what can we do? And do we have to think outside the box a little bit? Well, we can't think too far outside the box because we're restricted by AASHTO and MUTCD and other rules. But if this isn't working, what will work? What can we come up with that will be signed off by the traffic engineers and be consistent with the MUTCD and AASHTO and other requirements that are written into the traffic designer's code? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Spencer, for the feedback. Chair Eisenstein, the floor is back to you.
Okay, my suggestion maybe at this point, does it make sense to determine what funding would be required to replace them or repair them, and then take that budget and put it towards education and signage? That would be my suggestion is, you know, let's look at that amount of money that we would have if we wanted to redo the Sheros and put it into something more useful, which would be signage and an education program. So I could present a motion to eliminate the Sheros and use the money, or I could, we could just maybe do some sort of budget. I don't know who I would go to determine that, but I mean, I think there are two options. We look at what funds are available, or what funds we would need to redo the Sheros, and then we would maybe come up with some ideas as to how we would use that money in a better way. So I guess that would be my question. Do we want to go ahead and do a motion that we don't really feel that Sheros are useful, or do you want me to go back and look at what it would cost to redo them and look at that from a financial standpoint? So I guess those are my questions.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes,
please.
absolutely.
When we talk about this a couple of meetings ago, I think it was in January when Member Spencer brought this up. I spoke with the traffic operations manager, Mr. Jose Lerma, and he said that the problem with maintaining the Sheros is that there is not, it's an operational fund. So it's easy to find funding to install them, but maintaining them is not, you cannot find any funding to maintain Sheros. However, he said they can replace 8 Sheros. So if the committee can strategically replace, have a list, 8 Sheros to be replaced, they can do that. With the bicycles may use full lanes. It's correct that it's not the signal shop who made the mistake in ordering wrong signage, but they are working on it. And I will ask him when we have a staff meeting, my division director, Javier Rosado. We now have a regular staff meeting every Wednesday, and I could bring it up. And
Thank you, Ms.
Mr. Engineer Rosado is here with us, and he's the division director. And the signal shop is under engineering division.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Glorioso Mas. I didn't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Rosado, so I'll let you and Ms. Glorioso Mas continue the conversation in the staff meeting, and then she can provide us with an update at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
definitely we will discuss it in our staff meeting, and we will come back to the committee with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Rosado. I appreciate that. Committee member Spencer, and then committee member Gabrielle.
I guess my one question would be if we get rid of the sharrows and want to put the money into some sort of other education or signage, be best to look at to see what, if anything, works. So I'll start looking into that with other cities, unless somebody already has the answer to that. Do signs make a difference? How do you reach out with public education? I mean, we don't require motorists to do any self-education beyond passing their road test. So getting the information out is going to require some sort of proactive stance by the city, whether it's putting letters in people's mailboxes or PSAs or something like that. So I'm a little bit skeptical that that'll work, but I guess it's worth seeing what's worked elsewhere, if anything has worked elsewhere. As far as putting in sharrows and not up, keeping them up, it kind of reminds me of building a bridge and letting it fall down, because we put all our money into capital expenditures to build things, and we very rarely look down the road towards maintenance. We've seen bridges fall down in other cities, and there are some I won't even drive under in Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. So it's not just a problem with sharrows, it's a problem with a lot of our infrastructure that we just don't put the money into keeping it up once we build it. Thank you.
Thank you, committee member Spencer. Committee member Gabrielle.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say something similar to what you said, Cal, is that suggest that we do some research, and I'm happy to help you with that. And I'm wondering if the MPO may have information about other strategies for sharing roads. The other question I have is, if this committee does not sound like they're supportive of repairing the sharrows, and if that's the case, do we have the flexibility? Does the city have the flexibility to take those funds that were allocated for the 8 sharrows or whatever, to put that aside and use it for a more effective strategy? And do we want to limit ourselves to the budget that was originally identified for the sharrows? Or do we want to say, this is what we need in these locations, this is what it might cost, and maybe we don't even get involved with the cost, but this is what we need. And if it's more than the sharrow budget, that somebody recommend to the city that we need more money to make these shared streets safer, and that we don't just limit ourselves to what has been made available to repair a limited number of sharrows. Is it clear what I just said?
Yes, I think so, committee member Gabrielle. Any other comments or feedback? So I haven't heard a motion, and it seems like there's probably more discussion that needs to be had on the matter in regards to, I think we need to do investigating in regards to what happened in the past, what happened with the proposal and the allocation, and how come signs didn't go up. That's a different matter. I think the committee then needs to determine how they want to support sharrows in the future, one way or another. And so unless I'm hearing a motion, then I think we continue this conversation and then make a determination maybe next meeting.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing after doing a little research, and I'll sort of look into it as well and see what other cities are doing, and we'll see what Mr. Rosado and Romella come up with. And then I really would like for us to move forward on this and make some sort of decision at the next meeting, because it's clear that most of us are saying this really isn't the right way to go. And to pour money into putting up new sharrows just doesn't really make a lot of sense. So hopefully we'll have some more information and can make an informed decision next time.
Okay, thank you, Committee Chair.
And the only other
Eisenstein.
question I had on my agenda is originally, so there's been some issue with the Bishop's Lodge Road and the speeding and the safety of people on bikes as well as walking. And my question is this something that's in the BTAC's wheelhouse in terms of solutions to these issues as far as safety of people on bicycles? Or is this something that's for another committee in terms of safety? I know that there's a project that's being looked at right now in terms of redoing Bishop's Lodge Road, but that's certainly a long-term project. And my question is, are there things that can be done right now to slow down traffic, to make it safer for people on bicycles, such as Robert had just mentioned? And is this something that falls under BTAC? And I guess that's my question, is this something that we would take on and make recommendations? There were originally cameras that were going to be installed, and that got tabled. And maybe Councilor Garcia, you can sort of explain why that happened. But I guess that's my question. Is this something that we would take on?
I guess I'll take a stab at that. So there's two questions, or maybe three in there, and I'll try to answer them one by one. Ultimately, I think, yes, it's something that we can take on and look at what might be a short-term solution for providing safety for not only pedestrians, but bicyclists on Bishop's Lodge Road. We can explore that, and I think that's at the purview of BTAC to explore what opportunities there are. In regards to the cameras that were looked at being installed in not only that location, but a couple locations around the city, it was ultimately tabled because the proposal that was put in front of us wasn't what was agreed upon by the council when they agreed to look into implementing the speed enforcement cameras. And so ultimately that's why it got pushed back, or not pushed back, it got pulled back by our police team. And it hasn't been withdrawn indefinitely. They're re-looking at and examining what's going to be put forth in front of the governing body for approval. So hopefully that answered your questions.
Yes, it did. So that's it for me. Thank you, Councilor Garcia.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you all for the spirited discussion on this. And we'll convene and we'll have the discussion next meeting with hopefully some answers and provide some direction. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to item 7E. I do want to recognize the time. I know that we've been meeting for nearly 2 hours, and I want to get folks out of this meeting at a reasonable hour, and we still have a couple more action items potentially. So the next item is sidewalk maintenance and funding policy. Committee Member Tallman.
I would like to move this to our next meeting for the sake of time.
Okay. We can do that. So we'll postpone 7E. Item 7F, staff liaison requests. Ms. Glorioso Mas.
The same with me, Mr. Chair. We
Okay.
can postpone it, table it.
Sure. Okay. And
Mr.
I
Chair?
edit my comments. Yes, Romella.
Do we need to have a motion to table those two agenda items?
Postpone. Let's make a, sorry. Yes, absolutely. So let's go back to 7E and we would entertain a motion to postpone the items, not table. So postpone them till the next meeting.
I make such a motion to postpone 7E about sidewalk ordinances till the next meeting.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote, Ms. Gloriosa Mas?
Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Redner,
Yes, sorry.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Member Tolman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now on to 7F. If we were going to postpone that, I like entertain a motion for postponement.
Chair, I move that we postpone item 7F to our next meeting.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Member Gabrielle, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Finger,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Morlino,
Yes.
Member Redner,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Member Tolman,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Glorioso Mas, for keeping us in line. I appreciate that. Item 8A, update from Law and Policy Subcommittee. Committee member.
We have
or
nothing
Chair.
else from law and policy.
Okay,
I've covered everything.
all right, thank you so much. 8B, Planning and Funding Subcommittee. Member Tallman.
Yeah, I would like, a number of months ago, we had made a motion to request for the city council to take up the issue of how street closures would be permitted or how that would be handled. And has that happened? Because we're coming to springtime and we still have a pandemic and we're still putting the, as far as I know, we're still putting the onus and the liability on an individual applicant.
Sure, and I can answer that for you, Member Tallman. So that resolution that passed was only applicable until the end of October 31st, if I'm not mistaken. So should an initiative be brought forth for the year 2021, we would have to, it would go through the same process as it did last time.
Okay. So was that ever discussed at the council or?
In regards to the process of
how the street closure permit would be handled.
So the permit was, I'd have to I'm trying to put my mindset back last summer. So you would have to get so many signatures. You have to obtain so many signatures. And then when you meet that threshold, you would apply for the street closure and there would have to be the fees paid associated with closing the street. And the fees would be on the applicant.
Right, and that's problematic for the reasons we discussed. So I guess that'll be something to put on the agenda for next time to reintroduce that. Okay.
I think, but ultimately that, because that is, would have to be introduced by a governing body member, but yes, we can put that. Let's put it on there that we were not talking about it now, but absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Any other updates, Chair Tallman?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. 8C, promotion, education, and programming. The chair is Member Spencer.
Nothing beyond what was already discussed earlier, except to remind those who may have missed it that the subcommittee and any other interested parties, less than 20 people, are planning on meet on the Marcy side of City Hall for a short bike ride and discussion of community and other outreach for educational purposes. So either, if you're interested, it's supposed to be a nice day.
And that is tomorrow, or which day?
That's just tomorrow at noon. Sorry.
Tomorrow at noon. Okay, great. Great. Any other updates from the subcommittee, Chair Spencer?
No, just if four or more show up from this committee, we'll have to break up into 2 groups.
Okay. Yes, don't forget about the quorum issue. If no other comments, let's go ahead and move on to item 9A, matters from staff.
Mr. Chair, I will be very brief. Next meeting, April 10, there is a special governing body meeting. So Chair Garcia cannot facilitate this meeting. So Vice Chair Spencer need to facilitate the meeting. And then the next meeting, our meeting we won't be on live anymore on YouTube, because we are an advisory committee. We are not a regulatory committee or a policy making committee or a council committee. So the city clerk's office has identified all those committees that will be recorded or will be on live on YouTube. So those are the 2 very important things that I would like to share with the committee. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Glorioso Mas. Next item is matters from the committee, and I'm going to go to committee member Finger first, because I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier in the meeting, but the floor is yours.
I really have nothing to add. I attended the last public safety meeting. Most of the meeting was devoted to improvements for the police department and their evidence room. There was a great presentation on that. So if anybody's interested, just to let you know that the police department is really doing a great job to update their evidence gathering procedures, etc. It's a great committee. If there's anybody from this committee that wants something being brought up at the public safety committee meeting, we're not going to have one probably till next May. They're having every other month. So just send me an email. Let me know if you need anything brought up at that meeting. That's about all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you for the update, committee member Finger. And if anybody does have any, he represents us well on that committee. So thank you for participating in that for us. Any other matters? Let's see, I see some hands up. Let's go with member Eisenstein, and then we'll go to member Redner.
Just quickly, last meeting, I mentioned the Senate Bill 369 regarding electronic bikes. I don't think the bill is going anywhere, but I think we should have a discussion at our next meeting as to whether we want to move forward with making recommendations or actually putting together an ordinance regarding Santa Fe and how we feel that electronic bikes should be addressed, or whether we want to allow the state to do that. So just keep it in mind for the next meeting. I don't think the bill is going to pass, but it'll certainly be back again. There's some things in the bill that I wasn't happy with in terms of what the state would allow the city to do. So I just think it's something we need to talk about at the next meeting and decide whether we want to be a little more proactive on that. So that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Member Eisenstein. Member Redner.
Yes, I'll be brief. And it's good that Mr. Rosado is here because it maybe is relevant to him. I was doing a training ride on Tuesday morning going up Camino de las Crucitas from St. Francis Drive to the dog park. And they had just started doing street sweeping. And what had happened is that the street sweeper had come by and basically the street sweeper didn't work very well. And so it basically laid down a 6-foot wide trail of crap just where the bike lane is. And it seems to happen every spring. You know, we could put the man on the moon 50 years ago, but we can't have the street sweepers work properly. And I guess there's some resonance with some people here because there's like lots of trails now through the city where street sweepers have left trails of crap. Is there something we can do about this?
It's a good question.
We'll look into it, Mr. Redner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Member Spencer.
Just quickly on Bill 369, I don't even think it's been to one committee yet, so it probably won't get to the floor this year, but it is online if anybody wants to read it. So I don't think we need to belabor the point right now, but the bill is online and it does have a few things in it which would probably give some people heartburn. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Member Spencer. I do see your hand up, Robert, but at this point, this is matters from the committee. So unfortunately, I do have to skip you over. So I would encourage if you do have any updates, comments, feedback.
My question is for Mr. Spencer. I was just curious where your ride was tomorrow, where you're starting.
We're starting at City Hall on Marcy Street side at noon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other members? Don't see any. So with that, I think then it goes to matters from the chair. Just want to remind folks again that we are now officially BTAC, no more BTAC. So that is our vintage name. We've got a brand new shiny name, and thank you guys for everything that you do to make this committee work. As as exhibited with the spirited conversation earlier, there's lots to be worked on. We can probably sit here till 10 o'clock tonight and still not get through everything. And I think that just shows how committed you are to the work. And I appreciate the time and commitment you put in at least once a month, but I know a lot more than that, especially with the subcommittee work that gets conducted. So thank you all so much. I look forward to the next meeting. As Ms. Glorioso Mas mentioned, we do have a special city council meeting the next time BPAC meets. So I'll join you for a short moment, and then I'll hand off the reins to Member Spencer to run the rest of the meeting.
That's a scary thought.
Hey, it'll be fun. But I definitely look forward to seeing everybody again soon. And with the changing of the codes, we're now in green. Once we go turquoise, I don't know how that might impact us with potentially beginning to meet in person. I know a lot of folks are eager to meet in person. There probably will be a lot of protocol around that should we begin to move down that route. But we'll address that when the time comes, because I do and I'm thankful that we are on that path towards progress, and hopefully by the time this committee meets, we're in turquoise. But with that, thank you all for your participation tonight. I look forward to seeing you next time, and please everybody be safe and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.